Howdy, tabletop RPG fans. Thank you for supporting this channel. I'm Rangami, Grand Poobah of Game Design, and this Reviews Day topic is about how we played D&D at DunDraCon here in the San Francisco Bay Area. DunDraCon is one of the West Coast premier role-playing game conventions, and it was started in 1975 by Clint Bicklestone and Adrian Martine, with guests Lee Gold, who was the editor on Alarms and Excursions, Dave Hardgrave, who later created Arduin, and author Fritz Lieber, who ran a D&D adventure created by Jerry Jacks and Steve Perrin, who later created RuneQuest. In those early years, Bill Keyes created handouts to help people compile and interpret the less than complete D&D rules of the time. 45 years later, DunDraCon is still a premier annual RPG convention in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've run games and adventures at DunDraCon for over 35 years. I've actually been a speaker in the seminar room for many years, and a few years ago I joined the committee and help put on the show, as well as run the Protospiel room where we play test unpublished games. Remember, folks, those original Dungeons and Dragons rules came out in 3 books and then 3 more books, and with all of the extra material from the Strategic Review and the Dragon magazine, stuff that was published in Alarms and Excursions, there was a lot of content out there that just wasn't all gathered together and compiled in a single place. And Bill Keyes took it upon himself to change that. And he basically compiled all the different information gathered in many books, reconciled some of the mistakes and the changes that came along the way, and put it all together into a few sheets that were easy to ditto at the time, or mimeograph, and put it together into a collection that he could hand out at DunDraCon. And when we played the game, we played with his tables and charts, and we'd take them home, and that's the tables and charts that we used in our own games at home. One of the innovations that Bill had was the idea of a hit location table, and while it had been discussed in various places, it had never been implemented in an RPG. And he also liked to adjust the critical hit and fumble tables to make them, let's say, just a little bit harder to achieve, based on the fact that you had to roll twice in order to get a critical hit or a fumble. We used these rules in my own group extensively, and to this day they're still in my bag of tricks that I keep from my old D&D stuff. Bill's charts allowed a player or DM to look up a weapon and see what number was needed to hit a specific armor class. They also showed the bonus values for ability scores that would be applied to combat or spell effects. I've already mentioned that the D&D rules were spread out along a bunch of books, and frankly had a lot of holes and missing pieces. And when you opened up the original 3 from your $10 box of the white box set, there were a lot of pieces that just didn't necessarily make sense the first few times you read them. And without the knowledge of somebody who'd actually played in the Midwest or East Coast, us players in the West Coast had to make up a few things, and it really fell to Steve to solve some of those problems. Steve started encouraging some of the basic changes, like turn sequence, including declaring actions, percentile dice to determine a 2-hit table you would roll under, spell point systems for magic users and clerics that made it much easier to understand. And these new rules were known as the Perrin conventions and were used at many of the DunDraCon events. Again, my friends would take the rules home from the Perrin conventions and use them at our own tables when we gamed every weekend. Steve has been a mentor and friend of mine for over 40 years now. The Perrin Conventions, at least the 1977 version of it, was published in the second All the World Monsters book, which was originally made by Steve Perrin and Jeff Pimper. But the more complete copies, the ones that had magic rules and the percentile dice changes, are now relegated to the old files of DunDraCon, Grognards, and the trash bins of history. While many of these issues with D&D were addressed as newer versions were released, it's important to know that the innovations that Steve made changed the D&D game for many of us. Using percentile dice instead of a d20 and rolling under a target value was something that Steve would later use in RuneQuest. The idea of spell points was an active topic among contributors and readers of the Alarms and Excursions, the D&D zine. It wasn't until Steve called them mana points based on a Polynesian mythology book he once read that we had something thematic to call these. Because many of the computer programmers and designers of video game RPGs were here in Silicon Valley, they quickly adopted many of Steve's innovations and still used in video game RPGs to this very day. This episode is brought to you by Kaboomkin, the smaller, faster, funnier RPG of cartoon, fairy tale, post-apocalypse mayhem. It's time to blow stuff up. Get it now at www.kaboomkin.com. Thank you all for watching this episode. Hit like, subscribe, or ring the bell, or Booger will get you. If you want to see more videos like this, go to hopspush.com and buy an RPG or t-shirt. Do good, annoy evil, and bye-bye.